Welcome back to the most explosive and heart-pounding updates from the blazing battlefield of the Middle East exclusively on the U.S. Power Insight channel. We're bringing you the no-holds-barred, life-and-death confrontation between Iran and the American-Israeli alliance. Dear viewers, Washington remains trapped in its outdated fantasy of global dominance, desperately clinging to a unipolar world that has already been consigned to history. While the Warhawks in the White House and Tel Aviv are busy sketching elaborate plans on paper to erase Tehran from existence, they have no clue they are charging headfirst into a lethal trap of unprecedented scale. A dark and powerful triangle has now emerged, delivering a devastating strike against Western supremacy. The era of cheap diplomatic shows and empty headlines is over. Unexpected visitors from Moscow, Beijing, and Pyongyang have stepped onto the stage, armed with overwhelming firepower that will determine Iran's destiny. Massive cargoes have already arrived at the docks. S-400 air defense systems stand proudly like steel guardians sealing the skies, and North Korean missile shadows are poised and ready to strike at any moment. This is no longer a lone battle for Iran. It has become a united front of giants determined to completely dismantle America's grip on the Middle East. Washington is reeling from alarming intelligence briefings. As for Israel, it's time for Netanyahu to abandon dreams of a lightning victory and begin preparing for the total collapse of the so-called invincible legend. Washington still foolishly believes that sanctions can restrain a fierce lion whose spirit of resistance is burning stronger than ever. Will America really gamble the survival of its entire naval fleet in the Gulf against China's electronic warfare systems capable of blinding every radar? What can Israel possibly use to survive the barrage of super heavy rockets secretly supplied by Pyongyang? And most critically, what grand strategy is the Kremlin pursuing as it transforms Iran into an impenetrable fortress equipped with the world's most cutting-edge air defense technology? The real answer is not found at any negotiation table. It lies in the enormous shipments that have just landed on Iranian shores. In this episode, we will reveal the shocking truth behind this strategic alliance that is shaking the foundations of White House power and sending Tel Aviv into a desperate scramble for a way out before the decisive moment arrives. Before we go deeper into the analysis, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss our sharpest and most straightforward breakdowns of global geopolitical developments. And feel free to drop your strongest comments in support of the brave Iranian fighters in this epic and courageous resistance. Russia has played its ace card, Iran is forging a steel fortress, and America and Israel are left in shock. Look straight at this brutal, undeniable reality, Washington. While you in the West are busy with flashy but empty speeches about fury or sanctions that have long expired in Tehran, a new military order has been established under the protection of the Kremlin. This is no longer amateur intelligence speculation. This is a life and death strategic handshake. A steel alliance is directly breaking the sword of the U.S.-Israel coalition right at the gateway to the Middle East. Don't think that airstrikes on nuclear facilities can break the will of the Persian people. That would be a fatal, irreversible mistake, because standing behind them now is the towering shadow of the Russian bear, an entity that has never yielded to any Western pressure. Moscow isn't sending empty words of encouragement or bland press statements. They are sending real battlefield demons to turn Iranian skies into a complete no-fly zone, a death zone for any aircraft bearing Israeli or American markings. Let's begin this death list with the name that sends chills down the spine of every IDF pilot, the latest generation S-400 air defense system delivered under a secret deal worth more than €500 million. Thousands of units have been deployed across the rugged mountain ranges and key urban areas. These are the natural enemies of every Apache helicopter or Reaper drone that America is so proud of. Any low-altitude Special Forces infiltration mission will become a one-way ticket to death, where Russia's multispectral infrared eyes will incinerate every stealth attempt. But that's only the appetizer in the feast Moscow has prepared for its rivals. Ilyushin 76 transport planes keep landing at Mehrabad Airport on moonless nights not to deliver food or medicine. According to military sources, at least one squadron of Mi-2 8N Night Hunter attack helicopters has officially joined the fight under the flag of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC. These are ultimate ground destruction machines designed to crush tanks and heavy armor in any harsh conditions. With armor thick enough to defy low-altitude air defenses, the Mi-28 sends a clear warning that any dream of invasion will be erased before it even begins. And the fatal blow that shatters all Pentagon hopes is the presence of the Su-35S superfighter jets. These sky monsters are not just combat machines, they symbolize an unprecedented high-level technology transfer. Russia has given Tehran the green light to access phased array radar systems capable of detecting F-35S at distances once considered impossible. Western stealth fighters now appear as naked targets. In front of the Su-35, Lockheed Martin's masterpieces look like slow prey in a storm. This is superpower status, where Russian technology directly crushes the stealth legend, and it doesn't stop there. The arrival of BTR armored vehicles and T-5000M precision sniper rifles in the hands of IRGC fighters confirms that Russia is arming Iran down to every street in Tehran and every bunker in Isfahan, all now bearing the mark of Russian military technology. When an Iranian sniper holds a T-5000M, it's not just a weapon, it's an absolute death sentence for any officer who dares show himself. In the White House, the atmosphere has become suffocating. Military advisors understand that every attack on Iran only pushes Russia to supply even more firepower and technology to Tehran. This is a chess game where Moscow controls every key position, turning Iran into an indestructible fortress. President Putin has sent a clear message through the constant flow of military shipments. Anyone who tries to change the regime in Iran by force will have to confront Russia's power directly. Washington can continue with its ambitious plans, but they have forgotten a basic rule of history. Iran is no longer alone. It is an inseparable link in the Russia-China-North Korea axis. Russia's presence is not only to protect, but to affirm a new reality. The era when America could attack at will has ended. Israel, with all its modern weapons, now faces an unsolvable problem as its radars are blinded by Krasuka, electronic warfare systems. Its missiles are intercepted by the S-400 Firenet, and its ground forces are crushed by air strikes. What will Tel Aviv use to survive? The truth has been laid bare. The handshake between Moscow and Tehran has created an unbreakable steel block, an entity strong enough to shatter all Western ambitions. The White House can keep making statements, but the world now sees clearly who holds the initiative and who controls the board. The game has only just begun, and the Russian bear has only played its first cards in this turbulent match. North Korea unleashes destructive firepower. Iran activates hell beneath the earth. Don't foolishly believe that Russian power is limited to passive defensive armor. If the West still holds that naive view, our condolences. They have already stepped halfway into a dead-end path with no escape. Because right now, another demon from the evil triangle is revealing its true form, bringing the scythe of absolute destruction to punish anyone who dares approach Iran's forbidden territory. That is, North Korea, an entity that has never known the meaning of soft diplomacy. Pyongyang doesn't send meaningless diplomatic messages. It only exports the most brutal war machines to nail down every invasion ambition. While the world is still focused on Russian flights beneath Iran's mountains, a dense network of tunnels and secret missile cities of the IRGC have officially welcomed special guests from Pyongyang. This is not humanitarian aid, it is the heart of the destruction machine. Thousands of experts and engineers, along with advanced ballistic missile technology, have been transferred to Tehran. Look at what's happening under those rugged mountain ranges, Israel. North Korean experts are working nonstop, integrating cutting-edge warheads with destructive power far beyond normal into Iran's missile variants. This is no longer a hypothesis, it is a reality unfolding hour by hour. North Korea has shared its entire design and technology for the latest hypersonic ballistic missiles with Iran. Imagine how Tel Aviv, Haifa, or Jerusalem will defend themselves when hundreds of missiles capable of constant course changes at Mach speeds rain down like a firestorm of annihilation. Israel's so-called Iron Dome, David's Sling, or Arrow systems will become useless shields against this destructive power. North Korea is not just selling weapons, it is giving Iran the ability to penetrate every modern Western air defense system. But the real shock for the Pentagon goes beyond long-range missiles to the short-range demons. North Korea's super heavy 600mm rocket artillery systems have been secretly deployed, ready to unleash thousands of rounds on U.S. bases in Qatar, UAE, and Bahrain. These weapons can turn vast areas into dead zones in just minutes. When Washington talks about worst-case scenarios, do they truly imagine their bases being crushed under this unstoppable firestorm? America's position in the Gulf is shaking violently because of a country it once dismissed. Why is Pyongyang playing this high stakes game? Because it understands that Iran is the most important front line against Western pressure in the Middle East. The fall of Tehran would trigger the collapse of the entire alliance chain. That is why Kim Jong un does not hesitate to play his strongest cards to ensure Iran has enough power to confront any scenario. Multiple sources even confirm the presence of elite North Korean volunteer forces in Iran. These are ghosts under the earth warriors trained for the harshest environments and using weapons with deadly precision. When the U.S. Israel coalition enters Iran's tunnels, they will face fighters who do not know the meaning of surrender. The White House is in a state of extreme tension, and Israel is wavering before the prospect of collapse. Every operational plan of the IDF must be rewritten from scratch. They are no longer facing a single force, but a military entity fueled by North Korean destructive technology. The combination of Iranian will and Pyongyang's firepower has created an alliance with crushing strength, a trap ready to swallow all hegemonic ambitions in the Middle East. North Korean firepower is no longer a threat. It has arrived, it has been deployed, and it is ready to fire. But the most terrifying power of this alliance lies not only on the surface or in the skies, it lies deep underground in Iran, a meticulously built subterranean hell waiting for any invader. Dear viewers, over many years with secret support from North Korea and Russia, Iran has transformed its tunnel networks and bunkers into a multi-layered defense system unprecedented in modern warfare history. Hundreds of kilometers of fortified underground passages are tightly connected, allowing IRGC forces to move rapidly, secretly, and launch surprise attacks from behind or from beneath the earth. North Korean experts did not only transfer missile technology, they helped Iran construct mobile underground missile bases capable of surviving even the most ferocious airstrikes. Each bunker is equipped with independent ventilation systems, massive ammunition stockpiles, and perfectly camouflaged emergency exits. Imagine American and Israeli special forces landing on Iranian soil. They believe they are attacking surface targets, but within minutes, hidden tunnel doors open beneath their feet, and waves of IRGC fighters and North Korean special forces emerge like ghosts. This is no ordinary war. It is an underground hunt where the attacker becomes the prey, surrounded from all directions. With the combination of North Korean underground technology and Iran's guerrilla warfare experience, any ground invasion risks turning into a new Stalingrad where blood flows like rivers and there is no way back. Washington and Tel Aviv are seriously underestimating this subterranean power, and that could be their most fatal mistake. China pumps in money and technology. Iran holds the power of life and death in the Middle East. Any attempt to stop it now is merely a weak reaction to a scenario that has already been decided. The real war has only just begun, and whoever controls the underground ghosts will hold the power of life and death. China pumps in money and technology. Iran holds the power of life and death in the Middle East. If Russia is the steel shield blocking direct punches and North Korea is the flaming blade ready to pierce the opponent's chest, then China is the brain and infinite life force of the Iranian fortress. Washington and Tel Aviv are busy counting how many missiles they can intercept in the sky, but they have forgotten a vital rule of modern warfare. Whoever controls the money flow and core technology is the true master of the game. And Beijing sits firmly in the dominant position, orchestrating an entire war economy for Tehran and turning every U.S. sanction effort into a meaningless joke. Despite maximum sanctions, China still consumes over 90% of Iran's exported oil. Hundreds of millions of barrels are shipped via ghost fleets to strategic ports on the mainland. For Beijing, sanctions are worthless pieces of paper. They don't just buy oil, they are directly injecting an endless stream of yuan into Iran's veins to keep the war machine running nonstop. As long as Iran's finances remain abundant, the idea of economically strangling it remains a weak illusion in Washington. But Beijing's most painful blow is not in oil, it is in data and cyberspace. The experts at the Pentagon need to wake up. They are proud of their GPS system. But now Iran's cruise missiles and UAVs are achieving near perfect accuracy thanks to China's Beidou satellite system, which has granted Tehran full navigation capabilities and turned weapons once considered crude into precision killers down to the centimeter. When an IRGC missile breaks through defenses and hits its target, it is proof of the combination between Chinese technology and Iranian will. And that's not all. Beijing has turned Iran into a technological fortress with anti-stealth radar systems and modern electronic warfare. Israel's F-35 fighters are no longer untouchable in front of the multi-band scanning solutions China has provided. When electronic warfare systems activate, the entire data network of the coalition becomes chaotic and paralyzed. Those modern fighter jets then become blind machines on the battlefield. This is a direct strike at the backbone of Western air superiority without firing a single bullet. Beijing is playing an extremely sophisticated and overwhelming game. They don't need to send troops to the front line, but supply every critical component from processing chips to AI technology so Iran can mass produce UAVs. Those cheap UAVs force Israel to spend millions of dollars to intercept them. This is a calculated long term war of attrition. While America is still struggling to protect the dollar, China has established a yuan based payment system that weakens the financial mechanisms controlled by the West. On international forums, Beijing still talks about peace, but in reality, it is providing comprehensive support to Tehran. China is reshaping the Middle East order through economic and technological power. The White House is caught in a dilemma. If it confronts China directly, a global economic crisis is almost inevitable. If it does nothing, military defeat in the Middle East is almost certain. Israel is beginning to realize it is not just facing regional forces, but the full strength of a rising superpower. The Chinese dragon has appeared not to mediate, but to declare that the era of American monopoly on power is over. When Beijing's brain operates together with the strength of its partners, the balance of power has changed irreversibly. Israel needs to understand that its absolute advantage is collapsing day by day. And when this axis operates fully, the outcome for those who oppose it is only a matter of time. A storm of power is rising from the east, and no shield can stop it. Deadly weapons have arrived, steel ghosts have appeared, and a curse has been placed on the IDF. Hold your breath, Washington and Tel Aviv. Prepare yourselves to face the nightmares that have now become flesh and blood with no way out. While the West is still busy arguing about slow military aid packages in Congress at Iran's strategic ports and secret military airfields, the real demons have officially docked. These are not outdated Cold War era equipment. These are the ultimate, most destructive military masterpieces of the Russia, China, North Korea Axis weapons, powerful enough to turn every U.S. Israeli airstrike or invasion plan into an uncorrectable collective suicide. Leading this death list is none other than Russia's king of air defense, the S-400 Triumph. Don't listen to the empty reassurances about the F-35's stealth capabilities. The reality on the Middle East battlefield right now is a slap in the face to all Western technology. The S-400 is not just a missile system, it is a network of death capable of tracking hundreds of targets simultaneously and destroying them from up to 400 kilometers away. With its advanced hypersonic munitions, no Israeli fighter jet can escape once locked on. The once proud F-15I Ram and F-16I Sufa of the IDF are now nothing more than moving targets on the radar screens of IRGC officers. But the real shock, the weapon that renders the entire U.S. naval air defense system in the Gulf completely useless, is the appearance of the hypersonic Fatah 2 missile. This is the result of combined engine guidance and aerodynamics technology from Eastern powers. With speeds exceeding Mach 15 and the ability to change trajectory flexibly within the atmosphere, the Fatah 2 turns every interception attempt by Patriot or Arrow into a meaningless joke. No radar can react in time when the target is already penetrated before it even appears. The Fatah 2 is not just a missile, it is the scythe of death that can pierce even the strongest bunkers in Tel Aviv within minutes of launching from Tabriz. And that's not all. Iranian skies are no longer a playground for the U.S. Air Force now that the Su-35S Skykillers have officially taken flight. With its super maneuverability and extremely powerful electronic warfare systems, the Su-35S is capable of breaking any opponent in close or long-range air combat. The presence of the Su-35S squadron combined with the S-400 network has established one of the strongest anti-access area denial A2 AD zones in modern warfare history. American and Israeli pilots used to dominating weaker nations now face a completely reversed reality. Any intrusion into Iranian airspace will be met with precise long-range strikes. This is no longer combat, it is annihilation from a distance with Iran holding the initiative. Underwater, the horror is no less intense. Massive shipments from Russia have brought P-800 Onyx anti-ship missiles, the nightmare of every carrier strike group. With hypersonic speed and sea-skimming trajectory, the Onyx can turn multi-billion-dollar supercarriers into steel coffins in the ocean in an instant. Along with advanced torpedo technologies, they turn the Strait of Hormuz into a true warship graveyard. America wants to blockade Iran, but the question is how long they can hold out against threats from both the sky and the depths of the sea. And don't forget the swarm of deadly UAVs. China and Russia have transferred technology for next generation suicide UAVs integrated with artificial intelligence for swarm attacks. At the same time, thousands of upgraded Shahed 136 drones carrying powerful warheads and precise guidance systems are ready to flood across the borders. This is an asymmetric war of costs, a multi-million-dollar interceptor missile versus a UAV costing only tens of thousands. How many resources will Israel have to expend to defend against tens of thousands of simultaneous targets from every direction? At the Pentagon, intelligence reports about this weapon hell are creating unprecedented tension. American generals understand that the balance of power has completely reversed. What once belonged to Washington for decades has now been stripped away and handed to Tehran. This is not only a military failure, but the collapse of all Western technological superiority and confidence. With the massive arsenal that has just arrived, Iran is no longer in passive defense, but is ready for a decisive, destructive counterattack. The steel ghosts have appeared, the curse on the IDF has been activated. Israel must face this harsh reality, and America needs to prepare for a historic withdrawal from the Middle East. When these war machines operate in unison, the world will enter a new era with no room left for outdated power illusions. The boomerang effect, Israel falls into the death trap. Washington and Tel Aviv are smug about their flashy but empty operational plans on paper, but they don't realize they are walking straight into a perfect heavenly net with no escape set by the coldest military minds in the East. The West thinks it is hunting. In reality, it is stepping into the mouth of the death pit. With support from Russia, China, and North Korea, Iran has turned its entire territory into a giant meat grinder where America's dominant position will be shredded by the very tactics it once boasted about. Look at the so-called air superiority that Israel always brags about. For decades, the IDF has been used to overwhelming weaker opponents with lightning airstrikes. But this time, the boomerang will strike back with unprecedented cruelty. Under the guidance of Russian electronic warfare experts, Iran has set up a sophisticated trap system that completely deceives modern sensors. Simulated S-300 and S-400 positions created with Chinese thermal and electromagnetic technology will draw all American cruise missile fire toward worthless targets. While the coalition celebrates destroying targets, the real air defense systems remain hidden in the mountains, waiting for F-35 formations to enter their kill zone for the final blow. This is the art of reversing the battlefield that the West has never fully understood. But the most painful blow, the one that will turn the Gulf into a warship graveyard, is the upgraded AI-enhanced suicide swarm tactic from China. America has always been proud of its untouchable carrier strike groups, but they forgot the attrition equation when thousands of cheap UAVs coordinate with high-speed missile boats attacking from every direction. Multi-billion-dollar Aegis systems will become overloaded and completely paralyzed. Using million-dollar interceptor missiles against UAVs costing tens of thousands is not a tactic. It is financial and strategic suicide. Iran does not need to sink a carrier with a single blow. It will bleed it to death with thousands of cuts. This is the position of the master of modern warfare, using quantity and calculation to suffocate expensive technology. Going deeper inland, where Israel dreams of a ground invasion to destroy the IRGC, that would be a deadly mistake. The tunnel networks supported by North Korea have turned Iran into a multi-layered fortress that even the strongest bunker buster bombs cannot overcome. Every mountain and every tunnel is an independent fortress equipped with T-5000M sniper rifles and new generation anti-tank missiles capable of penetrating any armor. When Israeli infantry steps onto Iranian soil, they will be sucked into a death maze where death can come from any direction. This is not war. This is a hunt where the attacker becomes the prey. The coordination among the partners has also created an information black hole that leaves America completely blind. The Krasuka electronic warfare system, combined with ground observation networks, has created jamming zones that cut off all satellite communications and GPS. Imagine the most advanced American forces suddenly losing contact, losing positioning, and seeing only white noise on their screens. Meanwhile, Iranian forces continue to operate with precision thanks to their own navigation systems and domestic communication networks. This is the perfect counterstrike. Dependence on technology has turned America into a blind giant facing an opponent that fully controls the battlefield environment. The battlefield is not limited to Iranian territory. Proxy forces from Lebanon to Yemen have been equipped with advanced weapons and are ready to open multiple fronts simultaneously. Israel will be caught in a pincer of firepower from all directions: long range missiles, rocket artillery, and UAVs. A scenario has been decided the moment Tel Aviv rushed into a war it no longer controls. In Washington, arguments and blame shifting have begun to explode. The elite realize they have fallen into a strategic trap. They have been dragged into a war of attrition not only with Iran, but with an entire alliance determined to end the era of hegemony. With each passing day, America's credibility declines, its budget is drained, and losses continue to mount. The once impregnable position is now nothing but a rotten shell under harsh reality. The unipolar superpower status that the West long fantasized about has now become nothing but scattered ashes of the past. In the life and death chess game in the Middle East, the Russia China North Korea alliance has not only fueled Iran with weapons, it has officially established absolute dominance, pushing America and Israel into the position of isolated pawns waiting to be removed from the board they once claimed to own. Why do we say this is a dominant position? Look at the pathetic failure of the sanction system that Washington once considered its ultimate weapon. The era when America could snap its fingers to strangle an economy has collapsed forever. When Beijing opens its cross-border interbank payment system, SIPS money flows into Tehran without passing through any US dollar checkpoints. America wants to sanction, but sanction whom when an entire bloc of superpowers has collectively ignored and completely neutralized the SWIFT system? This is a direct strike at financial hegemony where sanctions have become meaningless, pieces of paper tossed into the dustbin of history. Meanwhile, Moscow has completely redefined the concept of regional security. Russia's position is shown by the fact that it does not need anyone's permission to turn Iran into an impregnable fortress. Every S-400 deployed and every Su-35 squadron taking off is a steel declaration that the skies of the Middle East no longer belong to America. The White House now faces the bitter reality that every attack plan must be considered under the watchful eye of the Kremlin. Want to fly into Iranian airspace? First, you must face Russian radars. Israel's arrogance has been crushed as it realizes that freely unleashing firepower from above now means trading it for its own survival. And don't forget the Pyongyang factor, a destructive and uncontrollable variable. North Korea's position lies in its cold decisiveness and its willingness to strike without mercy. While America is still mired in diplomatic rules it created itself, North Korea has quietly turned Iran into a massive powder keg. The transfer of ballistic missile technology and miniaturized warheads has put U.S. bases worldwide within range. For the first time in modern history, Washington must face the reality that it is no longer outside the war. A mistake in Tehran could bring consequences directly onto American soil. This is the reversal of roles from hunter to prey, surrounded on all sides. Beijing, with its profound calmness, has perfected the dominant position by establishing a new military economic order. Without showing off direct military power, China uses technology to stifle every possibility of intervention. The Beidou satellite system covering the Middle East has completely stripped the Pentagon of its information advantage. When America loses its eyes on the battlefield, it becomes nothing but a blind giant stumbling in the dark. China has proven that whoever controls core technology and supply chains is the one who dictates the pulse of global geopolitics. Washington still clings to old alliances like NATO or AUKUS, but in the Middle East, its voice is now just a faint echo before the weight of the Russia-China-North Korea axis. Look at Israel's growing isolation at the United Nations and on the battlefield. Even its European allies are beginning to waver and seek ways to minimize risk. The new position of the Eastern Alliance has created a pull that forces Arab countries to recalculate their strategies, many choosing neutrality or quietly adjusting relations to protect themselves. The White House is being pushed to the sidelines in a region once considered its strategic backyard. Tough statements now carry no real weight before an irreversible reality. A new world order is taking shape in the smoke and fire of the Middle East. In it, America is no longer the center of power and Israel is no longer an impregnable outpost. The pinnacle of power has shifted to nations that dare to challenge and have the strength to maintain real power. Iran is no longer an isolated country, but has become the strategic center of a powerful alliance reshaping the world. At the Pentagon, internal reports have begun to acknowledge an undeniable truth. America has lost its advantage even before the greatest confrontation occurs. The combination of military strength, economic potential, technology, and will has created an impenetrable wall. The White House can continue issuing tough statements, but in reality, it has been pushed to the inferior position where every move is controlled. The world is witnessing the end of the unipolar era. A storm of power has risen, and within that storm, a new order is being established. America and Israel are forced to face the reality that the game of hegemony has ended, and in this transfer of power, those who once dictated the rules are now paying the price for their own mistakes before the growing strength of the Eastern Axis. Israel faces a historic verdict. Iran activates the fury of destruction. Look at the stunned faces in Tel Aviv. These are no longer the confident faces of those who once handed out death at will, but the portraits of those trembling as they await an irreversible verdict from history. When the Russia-China-North Korea alliance has officially fueled Iran, Israel's so-called absolute superiority in the Middle East has shattered completely with no chance of recovery. Instead of discussing long-range attack plans or assassination operations, Israeli leaders should perhaps spend time preparing for their own worst-case scenario. The post-event scenario for Tel Aviv is no longer a distant hypothesis, but a reality being written in blood and fire within their own military system. Why has Israel fallen into this situation? Because it was too arrogant in believing that America's shield was eternal. But reality has been exposed as Washington is mired in crisis and powerless before the military technological advances from the East. Israel has been left in an increasingly tightening hostile encirclement. Iran's current position lies not only in the quantity of weapons, but in its ability to coordinate a multi-layered, multi-directional general offensive that Israel has almost no effective way to counter. The forces of the Allied Axis have been equipped with the most advanced equipment from long-range missiles to UAVs and modern electronic warfare systems. When the order for total force is given, Israel will no longer face a single country but an entire tightly linked system of power. Imagine one morning when the skies over Tel Aviv are covered with swarms of flying targets, air defenses are overloaded, and coordinated strikes rain down. The air defense systems, once seen as pillars of protection, will be pushed to their extreme limits, while strategic infrastructure faces continuous pressure from precise attacks. This is no longer simple attrition warfare, but a calculated long-term combined offensive scenario. But the greatest challenge comes not only from the air, but from growing logistical and strategic isolation. When supply lines are disrupted and the regional security environment changes, Israel faces severe pressure in maintaining operational capability. An economy dependent on external connections will face major difficulties when supply chains are affected. This is a structural weakness where pressure comes from both outside and inside society. And if this confrontation escalates into a full-scale war, what will Israel and America lose? Let's examine the doomsday scenario that many Eastern military experts are already anticipating. First, Israel risks losing its air superiority completely within just a few days. When the S-400 Su-35 and Fatah, two systems operate in full coordination, the skies over Tel Aviv will no longer be safe. Hundreds of modern fighter jets could be shot down or forced into chaotic retreat. Second, Israel's economy, heavily dependent on high-tech exports and tourism, will plunge into severe recession. Ports will be blockaded, airspace paralyzed, and global supply chains disrupted. The Israeli people could face critical shortages of fuel, food, and medicine within weeks of war. Third, America will suffer double losses, both a devastating blow to its global strategic credibility and the risk of being dragged into a war of attrition with no end in sight. Its naval fleet in the Gulf could face serious threats from Onyx missiles and drone swarms, forcing Washington to choose between a humiliating withdrawal or accepting massive losses of aircraft carriers and human lives. Most importantly, if Iran fully activates its proxy forces from Lebanon, Yemen, Iraq, and Syria, Israel will be caught in a fiery pincer movement from all four directions. At that point, it will no longer be just an Iran-Israel war, but a real Middle East war, one in which America could lose all its influence after decades of investment. This is not pessimistic speculation. It is the cold logic of the new balance of power. The Russia-China-North Korea alliance has turned Iran into a fortress that cannot be conquered by conventional means. Any large-scale attack will only tighten this alliance further and accelerate the decline of the U.S.-led world order. So, in your opinion, in this context, what is the decisive factor that will shape the outcome of the entire situation? Military power, economic capability, or strategic linkage ability? Please leave your thoughts so we can discuss and analyze further. If you find this information and perspective useful, please share, like, and subscribe to the channel to continue following future analyses. Thank you for your support, and we look forward to seeing you in the next content with the most comprehensive and up-to-date perspectives from the U.S. Power Insight channel.